Come on in, folks. Come on in. Come on in.
Turn your selfies and
Come on in, folks. Let's have the show that we deserve. Come on in, folks. Give me a cheer, and then we will begin. Let's have a beautiful Saturday. Saturday morning. Saturday morning. Feeling a bit cold already. Let me put my jacket on. That's better. Should we begin, folks? Can you hear me? Taking a lot of time, folks. Taking a lot of time. I'll just check myself on YouTube. Taking a lot of time. It's fine on YouTube. And it's fine on LinkedIn, so I should begin. Let me begin the show that we did. Good morning, says Mr. Vaibhav Manocha. Mr. Manocha, I hope you can hear me. I've checked myself on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So we should begin. I've been waiting for you a long time. I've been waiting for you a long time. It's been 5 minutes that I've been here. Looks like the winter mornings have started kicking in for Indians, right? And we're suddenly getting more and more lazy in the morning. But anyway, let's have the show that we deserve, right? The show that we deserve. Bum 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, a daily mental workout, a daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go. But before we go, we got to follow a tradition, right? You know the tradition? You know the sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip? We'll all sip something together and bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail. So get your beverages ready, folks, because all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a shine, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Poured with your favorite liquid. I like some hot water with black pepper in it. And here we go. Nice. Nice. It's beautiful as ever. Healing as ever. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you are not alone. It says that we are in this together. That's such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. So, there is a lot of interesting things that are happening in this world. Just not today. I'm kidding. There are a lot of things. One of them, there is a research that these people did, American Psychology Society or something of that sort. They said that sharing positive emotions with your partner, with your loved one, boosts health. This is a research that these guys came up with. They did a study, and I'll say it again. Sharing positive emotions with your loved one boosts health. I mean, did they need to do this research, right? Could they have saved some money on this research? Like sharing positive emotions with your loved one, is it good for your relationship? Yes. Is a healthy relationship good for your health? Yes. Then why did they have to do a research on it, folks? That is like, what were they wondering? Like some guys came out in the institute and said, "Hey, let's write a paper on this, or let's do a study on this." And what did the other guys respond to this? The idea. Yeah, man. I think it warrants a research, right? But anyway, they did the research and they found out what they found out. And they could have just asked me and saved money. But they didn't want to save money. So we should move on. They've also done another study. This one should not be a news to any viewer of Thinker's Frequency. So they found out that LSD, a single dose of LSD, has found to improve long-term anxiety amongst its people. So earlier, of course, use a sort of a continued or a staggered use of that, it was clear that it benefits a lot. But long-term anxiety with just one dose was probably a question mark for these guys. Not for me, but for these guys. And so they found out that it actually affects, in a positive way, long-term patients of anxiety. A single dose of LSD. Now, viewers of Thinker's Frequency, what have we been talking about? Whenever we've talked about LSD on the show, you've heard me quote the biography, the autobiography of Dr. Albert Hoffman, the inventor of LSD. And what have we been talking about? About LSD and its effects and how LSD was banned. So mind you, this particular research, although it's published and all, it won't be peer reviewed or it won't be a standard research. Why? Because research on LSD itself has been banned until recently. If they reverse that, maybe I'm not aware of it, but until recently, for a very, very long time, for a lot of decades, even the research on LSD was banned. You wonder why? But the point is that it's continuing to show results when it comes to studies. Now, my question is, how many studies will it take for these people to actually give LSD to everybody? So you have a study, you find out that in that the hallucinogen, these psychedelic drugs essentially help it. And then you have another study, and all those studies need participants, right? And you got to find new participants because you're doing new study. That's only how you're going to reach out to a conclusion, right? So how many studies will these people end up doing till they essentially give LSD to everybody? Right? That is something to wonder when it comes to study on psychedelics. Always positive results. Always positive results. Never read a negative results on these. There's another funny thing that these people have found out. It's that chimps are willing to change their mind on giving new data. So, when it comes to humans, we don't change our mind when we are furnished, with new data, when we are faced with new data, because we intend to hold on to our long-held beliefs, even though data comes in an opposite direction. But chimps, it seems, they have a very, malleable state of mind. They are willing to change their mind on new data. But now, reading this research or knowing this research, you might find out that, hey, are you saying that chimps are smarter than humans? What was the design of this research? What did they exactly test? Did they test chimps' political beliefs? Or did they test chimps' business analysis? Or, long-haired psychosocial beliefs? No, they didn't do any of that. They tested these on chimps' food, right? Now that suddenly makes the research a little lackadaisical, don't you think? Because when it comes to food, even humans will change mind with new data, don't you think? If you found out a new dish which was nice, right? Wouldn't you discard your old dish which was not as nice? So just when we were thinking that we should start taxing the chimps, right? The research flaw comes to the fore, and we found out that the research is itself inadequate, right? As it always is. As it always is. You think that the world runs on such rationality, right? But you don't. But it doesn't. You find out that it doesn't. Uh, there is, speaking of rationality, folks, this particular story will actually blow your mind, right? So there was a case which found out that Meta had used like a lot of porn, okay? And there was a contention that this porn was being used to train AI by Meta. Okay, so there was this case going on that all of this porn on the servers, I guess, it was being used to train Meta's AI. But you know what they found out later? Guess what they responded with? Can you guess how Meta must have responded to this particular case, defense? They said that this porn was just for personal use. So all the porn that existed with those guys, they said it was just personal use. We like to jerk off on the porn, and it was not to train our data. Now, how much do you trust that response of their, in the court case? Do you trust that response? Do you think that Meta, had a copious amount of porn, uh, and when found out, it just said that it was all the Meta employees, they just liked jerking off to that porn? Do you believe that defense? Well, maybe. I can't say, but something tells me that it was being used for more than just jerking off, right? So that's what's going on with Meta, folks. Very interesting times, right? Very interesting times. I mean, just figure this company out. I mean, people are saying that, hey, this pawn was used to train AI. It's like, no, sir, no. I was just, then what are you doing this with this? I just like porn, right? Anyway, so solar costs have been going down. Solar prices are going so down that even Saudi Arabia is actually coming ahead with solar plants, which is amazing, which is just extraordinary. So, Mr. Musk has been talking about how harnessing solar power is the way to go for human civilization. And it says all energy is sun. All energy is sun. To which people, pro nuclear enthusiasts responded, all sun is nuclear. So, okay, I'll tell you again. Mr. Musk said all energy is sun, because sunlight leads to photosynthesis, which leads to fossil fuels, which leads to everything, right? So the nuclear guys say that all sun is nuclear. How much do you like that? How much do you like that, folks? Do you like the Mr. Musk argument more or the nuclear guy's argument more? Right? They both make sense. But for now, both of them are really kicking in. Both of them. So it's amazing whatever is happening in that area. Speaking of, I'll take a break from the analysis, folks. I'd like you all to please continue sharing the thing. Let's grow. This is the first episode which will have shorts coming on, or the labeling with our whole intern thing. So that's amazing, right? So keep sharing and help this grow. Okay. I assume in the winter mornings it's going to be more difficult for people to join in and be regular, but we'll not be lazy, right? We'll not be lazy. Anyway, so moving on, folks. A lot of news, of course, as the geopolitical fray is considered. Geopolitics is pretty interesting right now. China is winning. China had a tremendous deal with US. US didn't get shit. China got the tariffs lowered, right? So China is very happy, and Xi on center stage as Trump travel card has APEC missing. He says that China is gonna be the champion of free trade around the world, right? That's what China is uh, projecting. Now, how do you feel when China projects free trade around the world? What does it make you feel? I feel very weird, to be honest. I feel extremely weird. I feel, how can China even pretend to be a champion of free trade? Like, it banned all the internet, it banned all the companies. It's so difficult to do business in China without a Chinese local party, right? And it's impossible. China is the poster child of localism or screwing globalism. How can it claim to be a champion of free trade? But just when you think that the world runs on rationality, the world even cares about rationality, you find out that it doesn't. It doesn't. So China, which has essentially built an entire country on protectionism, is talking about free trade, right? By winning against US essentially. So that's what's happening. EU, in the meanwhile, in the same breath, EU is talking about how can it get the rare earth minerals from China, because China, in the spirit of protectionism, has stopped the supply of rare earth minerals to the world. And EU is bitching and moaning about it. EU debates in-kind China tariff to ensure critical mineral supply. So while China talks about championing free trade, it has blocked the critical mineral supply, and EU is just figuring out how it can politely get the you know rare earth minerals from China. So it's trying every trick in the book, and it's not figuring out. It's not being able to figure out what's the perfect way to deal with China. Obviously, it can't go hard on China because the whole economy will crumble like a piece of paper, right? So it has to go very benign, very benevolent, and that's what's happening with China. Speaking of China, Japan also talks about South China Sea. So Japan is waking up in a right-wing fashion. They are talking about, there is a war memorial which upsets China. So PM of Japan, which is a lady, Madam Sene Takaichi, sorry, Madam Sene Takaichi. She visits that war memorial. She's, by the way, also a heavy metal fan. So she is a heavy metals fan. I guess she's a drummer or something. She plays drums. She is a pretty badass person. Anyway, so that's what's going on. China and Canada also have problems. China and Canada are meeting, and Canada wants some ease in the trade partnership. All while China is talking about free and fair trade, right? We're not going to talk about Israel, Hamas, and US, Russia and Ukraine, because that's just boring now at this point. It just bores me to talk about those things, even though there's a lot of problems, of course, but it's not that interesting. Speaking of US and Russia, and if you're talking about defense sector, India is really moving forward with the defense play. They've signed a 10-year agreement with US to strengthen partnerships where they explore areas of collaboration. It's a nothing burger, it's a bullshit agreement, but it's an agreement. It's an optically important agreement, if not materially important. At the same time, Doge is entering into the drone manufacturing play of Department of War. So Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, is entering the drone play. Now, this is gonna provide you some cognitive overload. Department of Government Efficiency, that is Doge, why is it getting into the drone play? Isn't America supposed to be going heavy on drones? Why are they looking at cutting costs on drones, right? Can you guess the reason? Now, I've talked a lot about this. We've talked a lot about this. So regular viewers of Thinkers Frequency might like to do a quick mental workout and think about why Doge is getting into uh, the drone play, right? Directly, indirectly. Why do you think that is happening? Can you guess why? I'll give you 10 seconds. Think about it. It's an intelligent thought. It's a slightly long connection, but if you can draw this connection, it'll be awesome. Any answers, folks? No? No answers? The answer is drone warfare is not just a strategic play, but it's also an economic play. Okay? The economics of drones are what make drones interesting. So we've been talking about how drones are like nuclear power without a limiting factor. That you can just keep on improving drones. So as drones improve, the counter drone technology improves. As counter drone technology improves, drone technology improves, and so on and so on and so on. Right? So drones and counter drones just can keep improving with the day. However, cost of drones determines the actual winner. Whether you are being able to make drones for like a $10,000 or $5,000 or $1,000, that's gonna determine how effective, how materially effective your defense or your attack is gonna be. So maybe let's say you have an anti-missile drone system, right? But if to counter those missiles, your drones cost like $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000, maybe $1 million, that basically becomes useless. Just basis economic principles, right? You've got to figure out how to make 1 million drones, 1 billion drones at the least amount of money. And only the person who's going to make more drones but cheaper is going to essentially prevail in the war, right? China right now has an advantage in the drone play. You know why? Why do you think China has an advantage in the drone play? Can you guess? Can you guess why China might just be having an advantage in the drone play? Right? It's an easy question. It's a PPP play, right? China, everything costs less in China because of purchasing power parity. China is inherently a much cheaper place than America. So drones, of course, cost cheaper in China. If drones cost cheaper in China, China will effectively win the war, right? Even if anything US sends, if China is able to send 1 million drones to counter that, and those drones just cost very less, China is essentially having a serious edge. This makes it very, very important for DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, to actually start with thinking of ways to make drones cheaper and more cost effective. So this is yet again a vindication of what we've been talking about when it comes to drone warfare. Drone warfare is not the future, it is the present of warfare. Unfortunately, when it comes to India, India is only talking about the usual, fighter aircrafts, soldiers and tanks and stuff like that. Drones are gonna kill all of that, and without a sweat, right? Because robots don't sweat. India is not really taking that very seriously, and I hope it does. I someday hope it does, because whatever money we are effectively looking at spending in fighter aircrafts and so on and so forth, that's just money in the toilet now. Unfortunately, that's what Speaking of toilets, folks, an Italian artist, right? Of course, is it an Italian artist? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's an Italian artist has made a toilet, a functioning toilet as an art piece of full gold. Like, so it's solid gold. It's a toilet made of solid gold, and it's for $10 million. So about 80 crores, 90 crore rupees, and it's like a fully functional toilet, but it's also an art piece. So what's the value? What's the philosophy of this art piece? You ask. He says no matter how much how expensive food you eat, whether it's a $200 lunch or a $2 hot dog, it's same toilet wise. So that's, I think, a very, basic thought. I don't think there is something very, provocative or something very profound behind that art piece. So I'll give it a shit rating. Anyway, folks, so that's what's going on. In the defense play, we've talked a lot about this. Speaking of trade, Ford has decided to actually build in India. Ford charges up to make generation engines in Tamil Nadu. So the tariff situation was essentially uh, casting doubts over Ford's plans to invest in India and to continue making in India. There was a lot of news about how Ford might just exit the country because of the tariff situation. Tariffs left no incentives for a company like Ford to manufacture in India, right? Because of the 50% tariffs that the auto parts got and so on and so forth. However, Ford has essentially announced that they're going to make some engines. They're going to hire 600 people and they're going to make thousands of engines. 3,000 crore rupees to be invested. 3,200 crore rupees. Do you think, would it classify as a leading indicator of the tariff situation? Do you think Ford's investment in India for making its engines can be considered as a leading indicator of what is to come when it comes to US tariff measures on India? Do you think it's a good news in advance? What do you think, guys? I think yes. I think yes. It could be a good news in advance. There are leading indicators and there are lagging indicators. This is clearly a leading indicator. Ford, who was in two minds about not about moving away from India, if it's doubling down on India, let's say if it's keeping its chips in India, it says something, right? On the other hand, it could also be a case of sunk cost fallacy, that we've invested so much in India. Let's not exit right away. Let's not just move away completely. Let's keep a foot in the door so we could perhaps use it for tomorrow. So that could also be a perspective, or it could be that Ford is actually looking at India in a different light, right? In a positive light. So that's what's happening with Ford, folks. Speaking of India and Indian trade, we are really, going well with our deals when it comes to Mr. Peeyush Goyal. Mr. Peeyush Goyal said, India ready to put its seal on any fair and equitable trade deal. Again, a leading indicator of what might come. But at the same time, Chinese deals are in a bit of a trouble. China's home market, the domestic home market, has seen a 41.9% drop year on year. So that's a lot of drop for the Chinese domestic housing market. Speaking of the housing market, even India has some problems, right? When it comes to housing market, it's showing some signs of strain, even though it's growing in the premium and the ultra premium way in with a lot of traction. So that is something to really think about, how India and China are essentially navigating their housing crisis. So in a lot of ways, whatever India and China are facing in economy wise, they are pretty coherent, if not collinear. So India is also looking at spurring its domestic demand. So is China. China's housing market is also bit of, in a crisis. India's not so much, but yes, slowing down a little, and there are concerns, right? China's, China is adding gold, of course. India is adding gold as well. China is moving away from exports towards domestic, but India is wanting to export more. So there are a bit of differences, but in some ways, Chinese car economy is also moving towards SUVs, with the entry level cars not selling as much. Same goes for India. However, something is changing in that car play, by the way. So Mr. RC Bharov has come out with the earnings of Maruti. RC Bhargav sir says that Maruti has starting to give more, starting to have more flight when it comes to our entry level vehicles. Entry level vehicles are selling. He says there's a 30% rise. And he says this shows that the whole premiumization car narrative was a lie. So Mr. RC Bhargav has been talking about how it's imperative for India to keep selling small cars, right? Because big cars, while good for value, are not good for volume. And volume is where India stands. and volume is necessary for the industry to survive, not just Maruti, but for the industries to survive. When a few days ago we discussed how it's important for volume led automotive play to keep going for India, we talked about the second order effects, right? With volume, you have this whole OEM play, the small equipment manufacturers. With volumes, you have more dealerships. With volumes, you have more service stations. With volumes, you have everything. So volumes are what drive the automotive play, and Mr. Bhargav says that the post-festive demand will sustain, and small cars will keep on. So that's what's going on with Maruti. By the way, if you want to know about RC Bhargav, sir, he's a legendary figure. He's in his 90s, but he's extremely sharp, extremely data driven. He has numbers on his tips, right? So he has all the numbers on his tips, and it's amazing to watch him talk, watch him just do anything. It's just, he's a force of nature, right? Speaking of forces of nature, I actually got the opportunity of watching uh, Ajay Chadri sir's interview, which we talked about yesterday. The writer of Just Aspire, the founder of HCL, right? Hindustan Computers. So he's also a force of nature. So if you watch his interview, there's so much to learn from the way he talks, the energy he brings in a conversation. It's impossible to imagine or believe that he's actually a 76-year-old person. He is young, he's energetic, he's tenacious, he is, he has a different uh, feeling to him. I mean, it's so amazing to hear these people talk at that age. So whenever you hear Sanjeev Bichchandani sir talk or Ajay Chaudhary sir talk and all of these people talk, you're like, man, how are these people being able to cobble together so many facts and in such a coherent fashion that their conversation is almost like it's gold, right? And at that age. So it's amazing what these people have been able to do when it comes to maintaining their intellectual might, right? And that's very inspiring, supremely inspiring. Speaking of what's inspiring, folks, Apple's India's harvest is pretty much good, right? Uh, Festive demand, discount lifts sales of premium models. So not the ultra premium thin play, because we discussed about that. That's not on fire, but everything else is, right? So Apple is doing well in that regard. A lot of numbers came out, by the way, right? And those numbers have painted more or less a positive picture. It's not very it's not out and out beautiful, but it's nothing bad either, and in some cases it's actually positive, so it's leaning positive. I've always told you, this particular quarter, the October, November, December quarter, that's where most positive news will start coming, as if it's coming all at once and in an unexpected way. But it should not seem unexpected to you, because we've been talking about how this economy cyclicality, if that's a word, right? Yeah, its cyclical nature is leading to a lot of predictable outcomes, at least for us, because we've been able to read it, right? Read it. Moving on. There's a lot of chatter about how Lenskart's IPO has almost sailed through on day one, 1.13, almost subscribed, right? So very, very lackadaisical, of course, but still subscribed. So all the mutual fund guys, the anchor investors, they really helped the IPO sail through, which again proves what we talked about. You think that the world runs on rationality. You think that, it's the rationals, it's the intellectual weight of your argument that actually convinces people, and that's what actually makes the world go round. But it's not. It's not. It's basically irrational friendships, right? Relationships and so on and so forth, which actually, lead to these things. Moving on, folks. So FPI's binge on bonds in October, stable rupee, Fed rate cut, and increasing likelihood of US trade deal boost for Indians' sovereign debt. So FPIs are coming in. Inflows of over 12,000 crores from overseas funds in bonds. Speaking of bonds, RBI's auction cancelling. So RBI cancelled in auction because of the yield hardening. So when RBI cancelled the auction, what essentially happened is, right? I mean, you might find out it confusing, find it to be a bit confusing. The thing is, yields ease after RBI cancels bond auction. So why would yields ease when RBI cancels the bond auction? Okay, so RBI was supposed to have this auction for a 7-year government thing, bond, right? 11,000 crores, but it cancelled the auction. Now, why did it cancel the auction? Because the yields were too high. Yields were too high. Now, when RBI cancelled this auction, it signaled that the central bank doesn't want yields to rise too much, right? Yields to rise too much. That's bad for the bonds that exist, right? The bonds prices go down, yields rise. After the cancellation, investors, are looking at RBI keeping the yields lower, right? So they started buying bonds. When people buy bonds, the bonds rise, the prices of the bonds rise, and the yields fall yet again. So it led to a downward action in yields by people buying more and more bonds. So the prices of bonds go up, yields go down, right? And that way, the 10-year bond fell by 7%. So how did you understand? I hope you get it. I hope you got it. So when you buy a bond, a lot of people buy a bond, its prices go up. If its prices go up, the yields go down, right? So RBI was trying to hold this auction. Yields were too high. It cancelled the auction. More people started buying bonds. Prices went up. Yields eased, right? So that's what's happening, folks. In the middle of all of this, India imports a lot of oil, of course, crude. India is also importing a lot of Russian oil, Russian sunflower oil, not just crude oil, but sunflower oil. Now, India has a lot of requirement of sunflower oil, and only 5% of that requirement is met by domestic production. So Russia is essentially stepping in, right? 60% of country's total cooking oil consumption met via imports. So that's what's going on. Moving on, folks. Post-Synindhur war game, 25 warships, 40 jets, at least 40,000 soldiers and amphibious ops. Trishul underway in Arabian Sea. So a lot of war games happening with India. No sign of drones, folks. No sign of drones. We need drones. Moving on. We won't discuss politics, of course. There's a lot of political chit-chat. Some of this is business related. The government has offered 1 crore jobs for farmers, right? 3,000 top up for farmers. So a lot of subsidy play as well. This is very, very unproductive for the country, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Moving on. There are very few people today, relatively. Like yesterday we had a lot of people. Today we have very few. Is it because of the Saturday, folks? Is it because of a holiday? Is it because of winters? What is the reason? Would anybody like to say? Are we feeling lazy because of the winters? We cannot be lazy. Fiscal deficit hits 35% in H1 on capex push. We've talked about that. So overall, the fiscal deficit will be capped at 4.4% target, right? That's the target for fiscal deficit. However, in H1, it's reached 36.5% of the total limit of the entire. So in H1, there's that. In the last year, it was 29.5%. It's because of a sustained capex push. Capex push, of course, in infrastructure. So the government capex is what keeps the country alive. A lot of capex investments happen. So that's what keeping the fiscal deficit on a bit higher side when it comes to H1 compared to the previous year. But no alarm when it comes to the overall play, right? Moving on. Textiles, gems and marine exports to non-US markets up. Well, nobody should be surprised. We've talked about how the government is going to deal with the export situation. We've talked about it, and that's exactly what's happening. So you've got to deal with the tariff in a very, very multi-pronged approach. We've talked about how do you deal with tariffs. You find out alternate markets. you improve your domestic demand, you do some sort of offshoring when it comes to your exports, you set up your units in different countries, right? And what else could you do? You work on the input cost reduction, right? If you're importing a few materials which can be cheap, you can do that. Also, you lead to more credit and financing norms, right? Ease for these businesses. So credit finance, lowering of input costs, improving of the domestic market, finding alternate export market, and of course offshoring. So these are the 5 or 6 ways, and those are leading to results. So crisis is very important. Crisis is very important for the industry to actually survive, right? The JP Group deal is back in the fray. Promoters Gaur family has come back. Vedanta says we are very positive that we are going to be the ones who take over JP Group, despite the Gaur family's better bid of 18,000 crores. They say that we are very positive, and they say that we are very inclined to actually have the power asset, the cement and everything that can be looked at later. But the power asset is very important for Vedanta. Vedanta has its own set of problems, right? The overwhelming debt that it was trying to pare, and it has actually successfully done that. So a lot of good action on that front. And now Vedanta is looking at this 4,000 crore it's going to offer as the upfront fee, and then the overall bid is 17,000 crore rupees, 17,000 crores. Vedanta, the overall debt of JP Group was about 70,000 crores. So for 70, you're getting somewhere around 25 cents on the dollar. That's not bad for a stressed asset, right? Let's move on. We talked about Maruti's numbers. Profit rose 7%. Mrs. Street View, Street thought that it's gonna grow like 8% or something, but says RC Bharov sir that it's gonna improve in the next quarter. The next quarter is gonna be pretty good, pretty good. Moving on. BPCL also tripled the profit, 6,000 crores. State-run Bharat Petroleum Corporation reported a nearly 3 times jump in net profit, right? 3 times jump. Revenue from operations were up 3%, and yeah, so that's what's going on, folks. A lot of recovery. Gail, some losses for Gail, 17%. Overall, if you look at the Dalal Street review, it's majorly positive because there's US trade deal which is supposed to bring good news. The US interest rate, which is obviously has brought the good news, and the Fed rate cut might or might not happen. I mean, it's there, but overall Indian economy's view is positive, more or less. And while that is happening, gold obviously is doing what it was doing. So that's what's happening, right? A lot of confusing signals. Yesterday I talked about. I just wrote Michael Buriser's quote that we discussed, right, in the last episode of Thinker's Frequency, and people commented. One person commented, and some people even messaged like, "What do you mean?" Right? What it effectively means is that everybody's so confused about the economy. Like even the guy who's like a legendary short guy who has made like billions with the biggest short, right? He doesn't know what's happening in the economy. That's the bottom line. You don't know what's happening in the economy. So you want to short it. You seem to know that there's something wrong with it, but you can't place your hand on it, right? Speaking of future, what to do with the future? Mr. Elon Musk has recently given an interview, a big one with Joe Rogan yet again. I've not watched it yet, but I intend to. I intend to watch it, and after I watch it, I'll be able to tell you exactly what I think, right? But he has given a lot of view on how Tesla's robots and Tesla's the cars, the future products will have the highest interest for any product in human history. So maybe there is something in the AI bubble. Maybe it can pay for itself. All the tech earnings say that they are being able to pay for themselves. Meta stock, by the way, went down by 10%. So that's a crack, definitely a crack, right? Meta stock went down, but Google, Microsoft, they are rolling. They are rolling at least for now. So let's see what happens there, right? Bank of Baroda's net dips 8% as non-interest income declines. Sriram Finance up. Moving on, folks. We've talked about the phone market pretty deep. Now, AI at work to spot in-house human talent. What does that mean? That means that companies are looking at AI to essentially formulate the appraisal cycle. So for now, appraisals happen because of your equation with the boss, how much the boss likes you, how much you like the boss, how well you work, and the human reading of your work, right? Whether you're productive or not, and so on and so forth. Now it seems like companies are excited about the idea of having an AI co-pilot to actually decide whether a human is supposed to be promoted, demoted, given a raise, or so on and so forth. Move to the leadership. Well, is that scary? Does that scare you, folks? Does that scare you that an AI would be judging your output or your working style or your working productivity? And basis that, it'll essentially decide whether you should be taken on a leadership role or whether you should get a raise or promotion or so on and so forth. Is it scary? Well, it's definitely scary for me, right? It definitely looks scary for me, but it is what it is. So, in-house human talent, companies across sectors are banking on artificial intelligence to identify high potential employees within organizations who can take up leadership roles. Well, that went well. That's one story that cannot go wrong, right? Moving on. Uh, there is a comment. If your boss is Mr. Tiwari has written, is if your boss is an asshole, he means is an a-hole, then it's good. But what if the AI is also an asshole, right? Who knows? What do you think about AI judgment of your work? Can you trust it? Would you be trusting an AI judgment of your work, right? More than your boss's judgment? Would you rather have AI judge your work, or would you rather choose to have your boss's equation with you decide your future? Because what's the biggest saying in the company culture? You don't quit companies, you quit bosses, right? So if you have a good boss, you're very happy. If you don't have a good boss, you have a very, very sad life. So you don't quit a company, you quit a boss. Well, that's a clear saying. But what it doesn't say is that your boss is at least human, right? And it responds to human aspects. How is AI gonna look at that, right? That's something very, very interesting. So maybe, uh, that's what's happening. Narayana Health buys UK's Practice Plus hospitals. Practice Plus hospitals getting acquired. Through this deal, the company essentially is gained access to the UK healthcare market, projected to grow in the coming years. There's also an aspect of Indian hospital chains going outside to essentially lead to more business in India, right? Because of the medical tourism play. Even though that idea is a bit far-fetched, it's not unreal, and it's definitely something on the cards. But for now, there's a lot of PE and deal action happening in the hospital sector, right? And some of the hospitals, Indian hospitals, are actually even going abroad, which is great. So Narayana Health is one of those players. Moving on, folks. OpenAI ramps up hiring to focus on Indian startups. Company hiring in the go-to-market and solutions architect team to deploy Gen AI. Well, nobody should be surprised that. Mr. Ajay Chadri, sir, from HCL, of course, also said that India has a lot of scope to design things. And the way he said that, how do you deal with the import substitution play. He said all our CCTVs are Chinese chips. All are, even we got a government attendance machine to judge the employee participation rate. That was also Chinese. And an investigation happened, and all that data also went to China. So China knows everything when it comes to, us, even our radars, they have Chinese chips and so on and so forth. What he says is that you aggregate government demand, and once you aggregate government demand, you just put everybody out, right? And you buy Indian. So there's a lot of software products, a lot of hardware products, which can be substituted by Indian alternatives. And he said the demand aggregation needs to come from the government and not the consumer. How much do you agree with him? And he says that India has a lot of design talent, because a lot of US companies do a heavy design work, like a really heavy design work in India by Indians. So they have design centers in India. It's just that we don't design for ourselves. We don't have our own products. What do you think about that, folks? Do you think it makes sense? Yes, it does. Yes, it does, which is exactly what the industry body is saying about AI. That a lot of Indian talent is building building AI for US, and US is dependent on Indian talent for AI. But there's no in situ scope for those people to actually contribute to national projects, right? Because of less demand. So a lot of demand action happening. Government is trying to manage that. It's easier said than done, of course. It's easier said than done, because when you try to pose those kind of restrictions on foreign companies dealing with your domestic market, they allege that you're indulging in an unfair trade practice, and that allegation leads to complicated trade relationships. What if you do that and then China blocks something else tomorrow? Not the rare earth minerals, but something else. They have a lot of things to block, right? And then the whole industry will come to a standstill and nothing will happen. That's why, while that idea sounds good on paper, it's much, much harder to execute. So that idea is essentially 3 on 10, unfortunately, right? So demand aggregation of the government for local products is great, but it cannot be that brazen and apparent, because then India will have to deal with forces beyond its control. And with that, we come to the end of the 159th episode of Thinkers Frequency, folks. We did well. It was a slow news day, but it was a lot of fun. A lot of laziness I'm sensing from people. Maybe it's the winters, maybe it's Saturday. I'll never know unless you tell me. But it was definitely a lot of fun still, right? Our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. It's 9:04. We're gonna punch in anytime soon, right? I wish you a beautiful day personally and professionally. I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully, right? I'd like to thank Mr. Vaibhav Manocha and Mr. Tushar Tiwari. Oh, by the way, the patron thing is still on, folks. You need to step in and help the cause so that we can have a reliable show. We can have it sustainably. So I'm dropping this patron link here. Please do the needful. We've already gotten about 10K from Sumanth Kumar, Mr. Sumanth Kumar, Mr. Yogendra Pratap Singh, Mr. Vaibhav Manocha, Mr. Barun Sharma, Mr. Supreeth. I hope I'm not missing out anybody. But yeah, these people have really Mr. Abhishek Sharma and so on and so forth. Rest of you also join in, and then we'll have, today is the day when we have shorts and all. So I'm excited on how this happens. Let's see. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye bye.